If your map is averaging above 50 average CCU, then this funnel will change your life. Because in this video, I'm gonna break down the exact player funnel system I leverage for me and my clients. I'm also gonna break down all of the numbers I was able to achieve with this funnel, and I'm also gonna back it up with a lot of proof, and how you can create high scalability and profit with your Fortnite map. Because we need to optimize our systems based on what players want and desire. This player funnel only works for maps above 50 average active CCU or more, and it's probably not gonna work for any 1v1 or free-for-all genre maps. Okay, so here's how the whole player funnel system works. So we start with the attract mechanism. We first A/B test thumbnails, optimize thumbnails until we find a winning format, and from that winning format, we make many other versions so we can find the one with the best CTR. After that, we also implement some psychology to the thumbnails and titles to make sure players really click and join the map. Here, we track metrics like CTR, conversion rate, and ROI based on the investment into ads if needed, of course. Now that we onboarded the players and we hook them in, we need to make sure they engage. So that's what we do with the engage mechanism. We need to optimize everything from the engagement loop to the core loop, and then also optimize the progression loop. Then after optimizing every single one, we move over to the difficulty curve. You need to map out and know your exact difficulty curve based on your genre, and then optimize every single part of it. Next up, you need to optimize the progression curve. It's basically how the progress unfolds over time. It also defines how fast someone improves in the game, or how often they get rewarded, and how difficulty increases. If the curve's too slow, people will just quit. And if it's too fast, people will lose interest. So make sure you perfectly balance your progression curve. Then after every stage is set and optimized, you need to move over to the reward system. There you will add every single reward system there is. In the near future, I will make a whole separate video on the reward systems, so make sure to watch that when I publish it. But the goal of the reward system is to lower the drop-off and also increase the social party play. Then once the players are engaged, we move over to the retain mechanism. So the metrics we track in the engage mechanism are session time, playtime, satisfaction, MPP, which stands for minutes per player, and social party play percentage. So now that you made the players engage with the map, you need to retain them. So that's what we do in the retain mechanism. It starts off with a goal tension. Here you need to make sure the next goal is clearly visible and something they want to grind towards. Then you build around it with my D1 plus D7 framework. But I usually only keep this for my clients, so sadly I'll have to make a video about it later. But the goal here is, on day 1, you give them a quick win, something simple that makes them feel good fast. Then by day 7, you want them to feel more invested, more skilled, and more connected to your map. And after that, you use habit triggers to give players a reason to come back. Then you add comeback triggers. If someone stops playing, you give them a reason to return. Maybe that's like a bonus or a reward or anything that will make the dopamine spike. And finally, you control that with your reward cadence. Early on, you reward players fast, but later you need to slow it down a bit, but the rewards still need to feel big and more worth it. So after you're done with all of these 4 stages, you move over to the re-entry hook. This only happens when the player returns to the game. So you do exactly the same as the one above in the hook mechanism. You need to make them hooked again, but they don't leave the game. So that's why you need a re-entry hook in the retain mechanism. From the re-entry hook, you can usually move over to the events to push the retention even more. So events usually help with the D7 retention. So in the whole retain mechanism, after you optimize everything, you need to track the next metrics. The retention day 1 and day 7, the playtime, the average revenue per paying user. So that's how you track the LTV, and the churn rate, how many players drop off and how many never come back, how many players come back, etc. So now we went over the attract mechanism, the hook mechanism that got them hooked, the one that engages them, then you retain them. And now we move over to the monetize mechanism. We start a monetize mechanism with the player's desire. You need to figure out what your players in your niche really desire to buy. So make sure you design offers based on your players' desires, needs, and pain. So you really get highest conversion rate on the offers, because nobody wants to buy something they don't need or want. Next up, we move over to the UI optimization or remake. If your UI feels confusing, players are just gonna click off and never buy from your offer again. So that's why the UI optimization matters. When someone clicks on your offer, they should understand what is happening right away. They should know where to look, what to do, and what matters the most. So to remake your UI, the goal is simple. You need to make it easier to read, easier to use, and make it easier to trust, so you can convert as many people as possible and reduce the amount of players that click off. So that's why it's important to make the UI optimizations. So after you optimize the UI, you need to move over to the offer architecture. When someone joins your map, they already want something. Maybe they want faster progress, maybe they want a stronger loadout, more status, better rewards, or progress through the map faster. So that's where everything starts. You need to understand what the player wants, because if you build around that, the monetization flow makes a lot more sense. This is basically how the offers are set up inside your map. And after you set up the offer, you need to move to the value clarity. This is the part where the player needs to understand the value right away. They need to look at your offer instantly and get it. You need to understand every single thing. You need to answer all of the questions like what do they get, why do they want it, and why is it worth it to buy. You really just have to make it simple so they don't think too much. Because if they think you will just lose them and lower your conversion rate. Because value clarity is what makes the offer convert really well. The offer timing and positioning is probably one of the most important things. It's just basically how you position offers and how you time the offers. So, for example, after a win, after a death, it's like timing the offer in the perfect emotional state. But the offer timing without positioning is pointless. And you also don't want to place it in a random spot. You want the offer to appear when the player already understands the game, already feels the desire, and already sees all of the benefits from the value clarity. You also need to make sure it's in the right place in the map. And all of these three stages combined moves them into the buying state. I hope you can see how each of these three core pillars connects with each other. Without value, there is no point in offer timing and positioning. Without a good price, nobody will buy, and without value, nobody will buy either. So if you mess any of these things up, then your conversion rate will lower by a lot. So now that you got them into the buying state, which is the state where the player is open to spending and where the investment matters a lot, if a player made it this far into the map, they are already more invested. They already spent the time in the game and they don't want to lose all of the progress. So the chance of them buying the offer right now is so high. So the deeper the player gets into your map, the more committed they usually are. So that's why you first need to get them to the first purchase. The first purchase is what I usually call the micro commitment ladder. It's where you offer the smallest conversion price, like 50 bucks, so you get them to spend it, so the chance of them spending again is much higher. It's basically a strategy where you get them into the buying state, so they buy over and over again. So if you implemented all of these stages before correctly, and you're close to the buying state, then to get the conversion, you just need to implement some psychology levers to really push them to make the purchase. Of course, don't force them to purchase, make sure they see the value and they are okay with paying. Don't never force them to pay anything or offer any pay-to-win items, because that's not allowed. In the monetize mechanism, it's also important to include my 4-layer monetization system. I will make a whole separate video on it, so make sure to stay tuned. But I already made a video on it, so you can check it out on my Twitter. It's basically a system that converts every single type of a player. So if a player can spend 50 V-Bucks, it converts the player that can only spend 50 V-Bucks. And if the player wants to spend more, you can also catch those players by implementing whale hunting. Now that the whole system is doing the conversion for you, you're probably getting them to make the first purchase. So after they made the first purchase, you also need to identify which one of them is a whale. The whale is a player that spends the most amount of money and is willing to spend the most amount of money on the map. So if you don't have the right systems in place to capture whales, you're probably losing out on 20% of the revenue, because these players are willing to spend 10 bucks a session or even more. But also from their first purchase, you need to make sure they make repeated purchases and not just like one-time purchases. So that's why we got into the micro commitment ladder, so the chance of them repeating the purchase is higher. Of course, then the whole system repeats itself and you go back to the stage 1 of monetize mechanism. You can usually make them repeat the purchase by upselling them or simply just by cross-selling them. So now that you know what the monetize mechanism is, here are the metrics you want to track. First, we got the average revenue per paying user. You got the player lifetime value, so this also matters for the retention. So if you got higher retention, the value per player is going to be higher. You also want to track the offers sold and the conversion rate of the whole funnel. So now that you implemented the whole system, it basically runs on autopilot. You just need to like track metrics, optimize everything, and make sure to make data-driven optimizations. And the best part of the player funnel is that every single mechanism is connected with each other. Every single stage. If you don't attract the players, you can't really hook them. And if you don't retain them, then you cannot really monetize them. And if you don't hook the players that you just attracted, you can't really engage them because they're just gonna leave. So every single stage is connected. And it's also way harder to monetize players that are not invested into your map with the retain mechanism. By using the player funnel, your system do 85% of the conversion, while the marketing only does 15%. So that's the best part about the player funnel. You don't even have to market your map and waste time posting useless content nobody watches. But what most creators do is they focus 85% on the marketing and 15% on systems. So that's why they fail. They just post stupid content that does not convert, or if it does, it just attracts players that leave or never come back. So that's why it's important to have the systems in place so you can convert the highest amount of players as possible and not rely on a stupid marketing strategy like most creators do. And this player funnel allows me to convert as many impressions into qualified players as possible. Because let me show you the numbers. Because if we started a tycoon genre example with the player funnel and the number of impressions of 500k with 7% CTR, That's 35k plays. And let's say 85% sessions are over 10 minutes because we optimized every single thing. And now the number is 29,750 sessions over 10 minutes. With 33% retention, day 1, we still have over 9,800 plays. And let's say the day 7 retention is 24%. That's over 8,000 plays from still 500k impressions. And after the day 7 mark, you have over 24% sessions over 10 minutes. So from 500,000 impressions, you attract 35,000 plays, and after day 7, that's a total conversion of 24% sessions over 10 minutes. And that's all because of the funnel. But now let's look at the example without the player funnel, with the same number of impressions. So let's say the CTR is at 3%. From 500k, that's 15k plays. Let's say the sessions over 10 minutes is 65%, so we get 9,750. Let's also make the example of 90% day 1 retention. Now you're only left with 1,850 plays, and also day 7 retention of 9%. And out of 15k plays, you only left with around 870 plays after day 7 retention. So that's a conversion rate of around 9% after day 7, with sessions over 10 minutes only. If we look at the difference, that's around 7,500 plays. That's a 8.5x more plays. And that's including no marketing system or marketing videos. Because after the whole system is implemented, you just have to collect data, define KPIs, analyze every single thing, then you make data-driven optimizations, and you moderate results. And then you just repeat the cycle over and over again until your CCU spikes. So if we now compare the before and after, before you had no plugin systems, CCU spikes that go to zero, unpredictable, random, and unscalable updates, 100% dependent on the algorithm, bad metrics, low conversion rate from impressions to day 7, low average revenue per paying user, and also lower CTR. Your CCU was lower, you generated less revenue, and also the map would slowly die. But then after you implemented our system, your CCUs started compounding, you have better conversion from impressions to day 7, you got 8.5x more plays, your metrics improved, you got better taps, you got higher CCU, which means more revenue, and you got higher revenue per paying user with a higher CTR. So at the end, the growth is more predictable, and you got the working funnel that converts each impression into a returning and invested player. Now imagine how much revenue you're leaving on the table by not implementing this funnel or contacting me to implement this funnel for you. But now let me show you some results. For example, this icon map made 11k in a week, another one 74k per month, 4.5k, 17k per month. You can also find every single case study breakdown on my Twitter profile in the pinned tweet, so make sure to check it out. I hope you can see how if you have a real system behind your map and just stop guessing and publishing random updates, how everything can change for you. So if you need my help, make sure to DM me and also follow my profile.